Unless you are really used to using the pen tool or a superhero, you probably didn't get things perfectly right the first time, and that's fine. We can always go back with our direct selection tool and we can edit some of these paths and points and clean them up. So with our direct selection tool, we are going to select the anchor point labeled J. So we're going to select that anchor point. And we're going to drag it to the left just a little so her chest isn't quite so big. So we're just going to move that whole anchor point to the left. We're not tweaking the directional handles in this case. The curvature is fine. We're just moving it in a little bit. We're now going to move our cursor over the path. I'm going to zoom in between letter F and letter G. And when we get over this point with our direct selection tool, when we're over the path, at some point we're going to see our cursor change into this kind of curvature icon, and we're going to just click and drag up a little bit, and that's going to grab the two necessary anchor points. It's going to change the directional handles as needed so we can visually make this look how we want without touching the actual directional handles. So that's kind of a convenient way to do that also. We could have taken the directional handles and tweaked them independently. Scroll down a bit. But using that tool with our direct selection, that was quite easy to just tweak that a little bit. All right, the other thing that we can do is we can delete and add anchor points. So in Illustrator, your goal almost always is to avoid adding more anchor points than necessary. If you can get from I to J to A with just 3 anchor points, and you can, why not do that? Don't make a little curve here and another curve here and then a curve here and then a curve here and a curve here. Simplicity is the key here. So there are times that we might want to add or delete anchor points. Come over to your layers panel and we are going to turn off the contents of the bird template layer. We're just going to make that invisible for a moment. So that took that away. And with our direct selection tool still chosen, we're going to click on the swan path to select it. We are going to delete a few points that we don't want here. So let's go to our pen tool. Switch to that tool right away. And we're going to move the pointer over the anchor point on the tail. We're going to go over this anchor point. And if we don't like the way this looks, we're going to delete a few points, add a few points, and tweak them to make the butt area look better. So when the pen tool is hovered over an anchor point that's already there, the option it gives you is the minus sign, and that means you're going to take away that point. And that's what we want to do, so we're going to click to remove that anchor point. Oh, poor thing. We are now going to reshape the remaining path. So we still have our pen tool selected, but temporarily we want to switch to our direct selection tool, and we can do that simply by holding Command or Control. That switches temporarily to our direct selection tool. And we want to grab the pointer. I'm looking at goofy pictures on here. This point we're going to take and we're going to move this anchor point a little bit. When we hover over it with our selection tool, do you see how there's a little square, an anchor square that shows up? When we see that, we're going to move the pointer and we're going to drag it a little bit down this way. We're going to kind of pull this out a little bit. So when we get it over here, we're going to let go of our mouse and then let go of our Command key, and that brings us right back into the pen mode. Now that we've done that, we need to add a new anchor point. So on the left side of the swan, this is quite a mess. I think I was supposed to remove 2 anchor points, to be totally honest. click to remove this, click to remove this. My bad. We also need to remove this one. So click to remove that. There we go. And then at that point, holding the Command key, we were kind of tweaking this piece around, moving that a little bit. So sorry about that. There were 2 anchor points on that weird shaped tail that we needed to delete, but if you did it in the order I did, we're still perfectly fine. All right, we need to move the pointer now over this left side of the path. And notice that we have an asterisk, which means that if we click, we're going to start making something brand new, and that's not really our goal. We're going to hover over this path. And at some point, there it is, we get the plus sign. When we see the plus sign, this means if we click, we're going to add another point. And that's what we want to do somewhere in this area. So when you see the plus sign, click to add a new anchor point. And we not only see the anchor point, we see the 2 directional handles that it generated. Don't confuse yourself into thinking there's 3 anchor points. There's really only 1. All right, we're going to hold down the Command or Control key, and we're going to take this anchor point and we're going to drag it out a little bit. Notice that it's bending, and that's great. We're just going to make this a little bit rounder back here. All right, we're going to come down to the bottom part of the swan, and when we get down in this bottom area and we get a plus sign again, we're going to click to add a new anchor point here as well. Switch to our direct selection tool, and that anchor point that we just made right here is selected. We also want to add this one to our selection. So to get this one and this one selected, we're going to hold Shift and we're going to click on this one. So notice that the 2 things that are selected are these 2 anchor points at the bottom of the swan. Both of those we're going to change into being corners instead of smooth points. So come back to your Properties panel, and there's lots of ways of doing this, but with both of them selected, we can also come over to our Properties and we see the Convert options here. We're going to convert this to a corner button, and since both are selected, when we do that, both of them become corners. So you can tell it kind of flattened out the bottom of our swan. We want to make sure that these 2 are perfectly aligned, so we're going to use the Vertical Align Bottom button over in our aligning area, and because we had both anchor points selected, it's going to treat the last one we clicked as the key object, and it's going to vertically align them based on this last one. So this point went up a smidge in my demonstration. And from here, I'm going to just switch tools and click away to make sure I deselect everything, and I'm going to save. Boy, I never saved this one. Yikes. Let's do a save as. And it's probably saving in the background, which is great, but it's saving as this generic name. So let's call it your name and then Swan, and this is through page 206. Click Save. Good news is we have 2 pages left, so we're almost done with this chapter. Once that saves, we are going to move on to the anchor point tool.